guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through my February wrap-up. Now for the month of February, kind of similar to January month vibes, I did read a good amount of books, but I did not quite hit my goal for the month. That being said, I did read a total of 6 books, which I am going to be pleased with. This month was chaotic for some unexpected reasons, so I'm still happy I was able to get to 6 books. I also read some really fantastic books, so without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right in. First book I completed this month was Murder of Crows by Anne Bishop. Going into the start of this month, I was really craving something distracting, and I have especially been loving this urban fantasy sort of slow burn romance series, so I thought it was the perfect time to go ahead and pick up book 2. And I have to say, I was really pleased with the second installment, and I'm very invested within this series. I really am craving to pick up the rest of the books very, very soon. But if you're not familiar, this is the second book to the Novel of the Other series. This is set in a world where basically supernatural creatures and humanity live side by side over the many years, the thousands of years of the existence of both groups of individuals. They have come to a tenuous agreement, and essentially this results into the others kind of controlling most of the natural resources, and they're settled across large swaths of land where humanity kind of centers and congregates within cities and kind of makes the technological advancements, and they work with the others to kind of get access to resources to do that. In the beginning of this series, we primarily follow our main character Meg, and she is a human but has a rare power, and that is that she is a blood prophet. In the beginning of book 1, she escapes the compound where she has been kept her entire life and flees to a place called the Others Compound. This is a compound in which human law does not apply, and others, those supernatural creatures, live there, and it's in close proximity to human settlements in cities, and there's some interaction between others and humans. She flees there, and she basically takes on a new job as a human liaison for this courtyard, and her other main character, Simon, is beginning to not only form a relationship with her as her employer, but is also pretty suspicious of her as well, as she is clearly hiding something. And the first book in this series, it's really about following Meg as she becomes situated within this courtyard. You see her make friends, and given that she's spent the majority of her life in a compound, the access to information and learning and just the understanding of society and how the world works was very limited for her. So a lot of the series is really following Meg as she gets acclimated not only to be around other people, but also as she kind of learns to take care of herself and just kind of learns to be a part of the world itself. Book 1 I found to be good. I found it to be entertaining, and I really enjoyed Meg kind of making those relationships and those friendships within the courtyard, and there's definitely hints of kind of larger political issues. That being said, going into book 2, I really became hooked within this series. I feel like first and foremost, the relationship between Meg and all the characters present in this book just continued to grow, and I also really enjoy Anne Bishop's pacing as it relates to Meg's relationships. There's no rush romantically or even from a friendship point of view. And I just really feel like the author gives our main character Meg the space to kind of process a lot of the trauma of what she had to experience growing up throughout her entire life. To go along with that, I also feel like the political circumstances of this world was really cracked open in book 2. At the beginning of the story, there's basically rising tensions between the others and humanity once again. You kind of see this rising temperature result in a variety of actions that not only impact the courtyard, but also the larger continental landmass itself. We also got a lot more world building through other points of view that were added within the story, not only following individuals who are more connected to the blood prophets and the prophet that surrounds that, but also different political individuals who are trying to capitalize on a lot of this existing tension between the others and humanity. I just feel like this book really just continued to expand the story. I found it to be entertaining and engaging, and I also felt the overall quality of the story definitely took a big step forward. I'm hooked. I really appreciate the pacing, the slow burn nature of the relationships in this, and just the world is really, really fascinating, and I would give this second book within the Other series about a 3.75 of 4 stars. The next book I picked up this month was a middle grade story, which I'm so happy to be back reading more middle grade. I took a bit of a break through a lot of last year, but I just love middle grade stories. I find them endearing and entertaining, and the book I picked up was Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mabalia, and this is book 1 to the Tristan Strong trilogy, and I was delighted delighted by the story. I just thought it was incredible. But this story follows our main character, Tristan Strong, and at the beginning of the story, he is feeling anything but strong. After the tragic passing of his best friend, Tristan blames himself for that loss, and his family is obviously very concerned for him. And with hope to give Tristan space to start handling and working through a lot of his grief, his parents decide to send Tristan to his grandparents' house for the summer, and they live on a farm in Alabama. At the beginning of the story, we follow Tristan as he's traveling there and kind of setting up home there for the summer. Unfortunately though, on his first night there, a strange creature appears on his windowsill and proceeds to steal his best friend's journal, which is the last thing he has to remember his best friend Eddie by. So he chases this creature in the night and stumbles upon a very strange tree on his grandparents' farm, and from there accidentally punches a hole in the sky, which opens up a portal to this magical and different land called Mid-Pass. And from there, Tristan finds himself amongst the Black American gods, who are exhausted after fighting a very long conflict against an evil force. And from there, we follow Tristan not only as he teams up with these Black American gods in trying to save Mid-Pass, but also obviously find his way back home. I loved this book for so many different reasons. First and foremost, the writing is amazing. It's so engaging. It pulls you in right away, and the pacing of the plot is so fast, you're not going to want to put it down. On top of that, I love Tristan as our main character. Obviously, we're watching him overcome immense odds, fighting against magical forces and also understanding his own power. Beyond that, I also really love how much the author centers Tristan's emotional journey as well, the grief that he kind of has to confront, and also just the consistent discussion of emotions and things like therapy and being okay with talking about how you're hurt and how to overcome that. I just feel as a dialogue is such a beautiful thing to see within middle grade. The fantasy plotline of this is amazing. It incorporates African folklore as well as the intersection and the evolution of these stories as it relates to slavery in America. And so much of this book is also centering around the concept of storytelling, the power of stories, and even if the story itself holds pain, it's still important to embrace that history and also share that with other people around you. I just loved this book so much from beginning to end. I can't wait to pick up book 2. I just thought this is for sure one of the best middle grade books I have read in a while, and if you love middle grade fantasy, even if you don't often read middle grade, this is such a great book to pick up, and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I picked up book 2 to one of my favorite YA fantasy series officially now, and that is Akata Warrior by Ninendia Okorafor. This book was also just amazing from page 1. If you love magic-centered YA fantasy stories, particularly things that center magic school and magical education and kind of a chosen one trope, this is such a great series to check out. But if you're not familiar, this is a story that follows our main character Sunny, and at the beginning of book 1, she and her family has just recently moved back to Nigeria, and Sunny herself is having a hard time fitting in. She loves soccer, but unfortunately she's not able to spend a lot of time playing outside because she does have albinism. At the beginning of book 1, Sunny discovers that she has latent magical abilities and is actually part of the leopard people. And from there, she's introduced to a new and magical world and begins her magical education, and also becomes close friends with other magical kids that she knows, Orlu, Chi-Chi, and Sasha. Book 1, we follow Sunny as she's kind of introduced this magical place. We learn much more about the leopard people. We get to see her classes, her trials, her tribulations, and it all kind of culminates in one sort of adventure that she and her friends have to go on to try to save the day in the town. And that sort of spirit is definitely kind of carried on into book 2. Obviously, we see Sunny and her friends who already have a foundation of magic, but like any fantastic magic school series, we're still seeing them learn more about magic. One of my favorite components about this series is there's actually snippets of the different reading materials they're all referencing as like magical books and lore at the beginning of many chapters, and I just think that's so cool. I love any type of magical school, magical education moment, as we see them not only interact with their individual mentors, but have to go on like learning expeditions for themselves. And as they learn more about different magical creatures and different magical moments, so do we. And for me, I just eat that up. Obviously, as they're all in later stages of their magical education, we also kind of see them grasp more clearly their own individual powers. And one element of the magic that I just think is so cool is that a lot of power is derived from what normal society would see as a weakness. So Sunny's albinism gives her a specific power. Orlu, for example, has dyslexia, and that has given him a special type of power. And just seeing all of them kind of learn more about their own magical selves, I just think is so cool. This book also has more of a family component. There is this tension, as when you are a leopard person, you're not supposed to disclose magic to any normal human, and usually leopard people come from lines of magical families, but Sunny herself does not, so she has to hide a lot of secrets from her family, and she's also digging into her family's past in hope of trying to find where her magical DNA comes from. The overall conflict of the story for sure grows off of the consequences of book one. It's incredibly intense, and I really appreciate how the author gives our characters a lot of autonomy for growth and strength, and also just like going out to save the day. It's just such an engaging story, and I loved this book so much. And just based off the consequences of the end of book two, I'm so looking forward to picking up the third book as we continue to see Sunny and her friends kind of have to deal with the magical consequences of a lot of the things they're encountering. Seriously, if you love a tight friend group in a magic school, learning about magic, but also having to take on a great dark force, this is the book for you. Just the atmosphere and the vibes of the story is impeccable. I loved Akata Warrior so much, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, next book I completed this month, I'm so happy to say I finally finished, and that is The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. I feel like this book took me forever. I have been reading this book for about 8 weeks, but I did finally wrap it up. This, of course, is the third book to the Wheel of Time, and I would say I have mixed feeling. What I mean by that is, honestly, I felt the first 50% of this book absolutely dragged, because honestly it just felt like a regurgitation of the same pattern that we have run into in the first 2 books in terms of literal plot, like character journey, and even like character placements within each other. But then I would say about halfway through this book, I do feel like there was a bit of a shift, and I found myself so much more engaged in this book. And I'm curious if it's because Rand really took an entire backseat to the narrative plot. Like, his being within the story was very important, but we didn't get many chapters from Rand, and maybe that was why I liked the second half of this book more. But a bit more about this plot. Again, this is just another sort of quest style classic fantasy setup. We're following the same characters we have run into in the first 3 books. We follow Rand, his good friends Matt and Perrin, as well as Egwene, Nynaeve, and some other individuals. In book 1, we follow all of them as they leave their very small town and kind of realize that they're all important figures within the tapestry of fate that makes up the Wheel of Time. Particularly Rand is the classic chosen one figure, and his friends kind of get wrapped up and have their own magical fates as well. And then we follow Nynaeve and Egwene as they basically realize that they have Aes Sedai capabilities, and they basically travel to begin their magical training. I stand by my statement of the first half of this book, but the second half of this book did become much more engaging. Not only did we get more insight in characters, particularly Matt and Perrin. I loved their solo chapters. I found them to be really interesting, and also just getting more insight on their magical consequences that they're facing based off the events of the first 2 books were cool. I also found their chapters to be humorous, and overall they're just such likable characters. I also continue to enjoy the Nynaeve Egwene chapters, on only learning more about the Aes Sedai political structure, and also seeing kind of the creeping corruption that is the Dark One's power that's kind of touching everyone and everything. And I find that their chapters in the second half of this book was also interesting. I will say all 3 books have been plagued by a hyper speed ending. It's actually wild how quickly the events of this third book just wrapped up. I mean, a huge like conflict and fight and just meeting of forces occurred in like 5 pages, and we spent literally 500 plus pages like getting to that point. I do feel like Robert Jordan just like hyper speeds through endings sometimes, but I actually will say this is my favorite book that I've read so far, which is bizarre that I might say that because I have such negative feelings about the first half, but the second half really did feel like, okay, I feel like we're getting somewhere. I'm feeling really connected to these narratives and these characters, and I'm curious to see like where their journey is going to take them. I might not care so much about Rand, but Matt, Perrin, Nynaeve, Egwene, all of those characters I do really care quite a bit about, and so I am looking forward to picking up book 4. I would give this book like a 3.5 stars as well, but I'm getting more intrigued. I feel like we're going to more places. So I do feel like I wish Robert Jordan would spend a bit more time on that ending falling plot sequence, but I'll take what I can get, I guess. Next up, I read one of the internet's favorite books. I feel like people have been talking about how much they love this book since I noticed it when I joined BookTube a million years ago at this point, but I finally read it this month and I did actually do a reading vlog for it, and that book is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I had very high expectations going into this book. I've read The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and I already knew going in that I love her writing. I love lyrical, lush, kind of over-the-top writing, and I knew that this book was definitely going to have that going into it. But if you're not familiar, The Night Circus follows exactly that, a night circus, which is a magical and atmospheric and transportive circus that appears in the night and is disappeared by the next morning. The night circus itself is wrapped up in all different types of magic. Particularly, it's actually the stage for a competition between two rival magician pupils. Basically, at the very beginning of this book, two longtime magical rivals basically agree that they're going to pit their two pupils against each other, and at the start of this agreement, both of their pupils are children, and from there we actually watch these two characters grow up, and eventually both of them kind of getting wrapped up within the circus itself. This book is very, very atmospheric. The strength of the story is for sure the writing, just the overall vibe, this sort of dark and brooding atmosphere that the author is able to create, and the circus itself is absolutely dazzling, and it does have that taste of sinisterness, which you would anticipate given that it's wrapped up in this eventual competition between two rival magical individuals. I would say the overall strength of the story is definitely the writing and the atmosphere that the author was able to create. In general, I will say the characterization is a little bit weak, and there wasn't any moment where I felt deeply connected to anyone really present within this book. That being said though, I was really engaged in their tale, and while I might not have been sold on their overall romance or just the conflict that is existing between them, I was so fascinated by the overall plot and the vibe that the author was able to construct. It didn't bother me or matter as much as I would normally anticipate it would. Structurally too, I really liked how this book was written. The chapters themselves are sort of very short and kind of staccato in nature, which I like in terms of a reading experience, and also structurally the book is written in two different timelines, and you're slowly watching them slowly come together in this eventual big explosive moment. I just feel like the vibe of this really hits all the points. If you love beautiful lyrical writing, really atmospheric and cool setting, just the circus itself just felt so real and intangible at the same time. I enjoy the vibe of this book quite a bit, and I read it very, very quickly. And overall, I would say I give this book about 4 stars. It wasn't the best book I've ever read, but I do see why this is beloved so much, and there was a lot of elements to it that I loved as well. And then the very last book I was able to complete was Far From the Light of Heaven by Tade Thompson. This is a closed door space thriller murder mystery story, and wow, this is a book that is intense from page 1 and really hooked me immediately. I read this book so fast. This is a story that is primarily set on the ship called Ragtime. Ragtime is this big spaceship traveling through space to bring a bunch of passengers to a new planet to settle there, and they have been asleep in like cryo chambers for about 10 years. One of our main characters, Shell, is a ship captain, and she's also been asleep for a long time, but has just been woken up kind of as they're arriving at their final destination, and she's just supposed to make sure everything is going great. But once she wakes up, she quickly realizes that something has gone awry on the ship, and in fact, many of the passengers will never wake up again and have been murdered. From there, she basically sends out a distress signal to the nearby planet, which involves our other main character, Finn, who arrives on the ship, and they begin investigating what in the world is going on together. But things quickly begin to intensify in very unexpected ways, and just like the sci-fi vibes, the AI sci-fi vibes, like who can you trust, just immediately grip you. At least it gripped me right away. I love closed door mysteries. I love whodunits. I love like very intense, how could anything have gone wrong? No one was here but me sort of situations. I just think they're fascinating. I do really feel like Tade Thompson was able to create a very intense, thrilling, fast-paced plot, and he was also able to continue to escalate this mystery in such wild ways where you just will not be able to put this book down, because it's not just that some passengers have been murdered in unexpected ways. Things are continuing to go wrong left and right, and the source of what is happening and why it's happening just continues to be unclear, and the eventual reveal of it all definitely caught me by surprise, and I was just like taken away by this entire story. Outside of the mystery component of this book, this is a multi-POV story. I would say our primary characters are Shell and Finn. We are traveling to nearby space stations and planets and reading from a variety of different points of view. I feel like this is both a strength and weakness to this story because while I was always very much engaged by the plot, there were so many characters that I will say that sometimes I didn't feel fully invested in their points of view, or rather I just didn't care so strongly about every character that was present in this book. But I do feel like the strength of this story is for sure the plot, and if you love intense sort of thriller, mysteries in space, this is for sure one to check out, especially if you want an unexpected ending. I would say this definitely caught me by surprise. I will for sure be checking out more books by Tate Thompson. I really enjoyed his writing, and I just feel like I will love more of his books, and he's really well known for another sci-fi trilogy that I have many friends that love very, very much, so I feel like I need to check that out as well. But this was definitely entertaining, and I liked it quite a bit, and I ended up giving it a 3.75 4 stars. Alrighty guys, those are all the books I read for the month of February. Let me know down below some books you've read recently, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye!